My name is Patricia Morrison. Most people who know me call me Pat. I am 68 years old, and I spent 33 years working as an ICU nurse at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee. I retired 3 years ago. I want to tell you something that happened to me on February 8th, 2024. And I want to tell it to you carefully because after 33 years in intensive care, I have a great deal of respect for accuracy. I do not exaggerate what I saw. I do not embellish what I know. I have spent a career in rooms where the difference between a precise report and an imprecise one had real consequences. So when I tell you what happened to me, I need you to understand that I am applying the same standard. I have, by my own careful estimate, been present for approximately 3,000 deaths. That number is not exact. It is built from 33 years of 12-hour shifts in an ICU where the patients come to us when the other options have been exhausted. I learned very early that my job was not to prevent death, but to attend it with competence and dignity. I learned what death looks like from the outside. I learned all of its physical vocabulary, the breathing patterns, the changes in the skin, the particular stillness that comes at the end. I became, over 3 decades, very good at knowing when someone was close and how to be present for it. I want to be honest about something I did not tell my pastor, or my family, or my colleagues in all those years. I want to tell you because you are watching this video, and I think the reason you are watching it means you can receive it honestly. For most of those 33 years, I was not sure. I was a Baptist. I went to church on Sundays. I sang the hymns I had grown up singing. I prayed the prayers. I believed in the framework. But I was also a woman who had watched 3,000 people leave the world through a process that looked, from the outside, from my side of the room, like machinery stopping, like a system running down. And the honest truth is that there were years, long stretches of years, when I stood in those rooms and I was not sure that anything continued. I was not sure there was a door. I thought I might be watching people arrive at a wall. I never said this out loud, not fully, not to anyone who would have known what to do with it. I carried it the way you carry something you are not sure is yours to carry. And underneath all of it was my father. Earl Morrison died of congestive heart failure 12 years ago. He died in the ICU at Vanderbilt. Not my unit. I was not his nurse. The hospital had rules about that, and I understood them. But I was in the building. I was working that day. Someone called me, and I came as fast as I could, and I was 30 seconds too late. The monitor was still drawing its flat line when I walked through the door. The nurse who had been with him was still in the room. I looked at my father in that bed, and I looked at his face, and what I saw in the seconds before someone gently redirected my attention was what I believed to be fear. I am a nurse. I know the face of fear on a dying patient. I have seen it hundreds of times. What I believed I saw on my father's face was fear, and I have carried that image for 12 years. Not dramatically. I am not a dramatic person, but quietly and persistently. At 2 a.m. when I could not sleep, on the drive to Sunday services, on the drives home. Was he afraid? Did he suffer in the crossing? Was the thing I saw on his face the last truth of his experience. I could not answer it. All my training could not answer it. All my years could not answer it. The outside of the door cannot answer what happens on the other side of the door. I want to be precise about why this mattered so much to me specifically, because I do not think the weight of it is self-evident unless you understand what ICU nursing actually is. An ICU nurse is not someone who stands back and observes. We are in the room. We are at the bedside. We are the ones adjusting the lines and reading the monitors and making the judgment calls at 3 a.m. when the physician is not immediately available. We are present for the crossing in a way that almost no one else in modern medicine is. And that presence, over 33 years, had given me a picture of death that I could not shake. A process that looked, from where I stood, like the gradual dimming of a person until the person was no longer there. I had seen too much of it to pretend I knew what it looked like from the other side. But I had also seen enough of it to be afraid that what I saw from my side was the whole truth. The image of my father's face was the sharpest edge of that fear. If he had been frightened, if the man who taught me patience and quiet joy had arrived at the end of his life in terror, then something in my understanding of the world was broken in a way I did not know how to repair. On February 8th, 2024, I had been to a routine dental appointment. A new prescription antibiotic, an antibiotic I had never taken before. I picked it up at the pharmacy on the way out. I was in the parking lot of the dental office. I had taken the first dose in the car because the instructions said to take it with food, and I had a granola bar in my bag, and it seemed efficient. I have been efficient all my life. Within 4 minutes, I knew something was wrong. I know the signs of anaphylaxis. I have treated anaphylaxis. I know the throat tightening, the skin response, the blood pressure dropping, the particular sensation of a system beginning to shut down from the inside. I know all of it. And I knew, with complete professional clarity, what was happening to my body in that parking lot and where it was going if I could not get help immediately. I got out of the car. I do not know why. Some combination of trying to reach someone and the confusion that comes with rapid deterioration. I made it to the front of the car. Someone coming out of the dental office saw me. I heard them shout. I went down. 5 minutes and 37 seconds. That is the clinical record. I was on the ground in that parking lot for 5 minutes and 37 seconds before the AED and the paramedics brought me back. The hospital they took me to was Vanderbilt University Medical Center, the same building where I had worked for 33 years, the same building where my father died. In those 5 minutes and 37 seconds, I went somewhere I had been trying to see into for 33 years, and what I saw corrected everything I thought I knew. I am not in the parking lot anymore. There is no transition I am aware of, no tunnel, no darkness, no sensation of moving from one place to another. One moment I am on the asphalt, and then I am simply here. And here is so completely and immediately present that the parking lot feels like a thing that happened to someone else a long time ago. I am not alone. That is the first thing I know. Not the first thing I see, the first thing I know. The way you know your own name. I am surrounded. The word surrounded does not quite reach it because it implies a perimeter, a me at the center and things at the edges, and what I am experiencing has no edges. It is more like being inside a gathering, like being the reason a gathering has assembled. And then I begin to understand who is here. I have spent 33 years in an ICU. I have stood at the end of more lives than I can count. I have held hands. I have watched monitors go flat. I have had the specific, terrible experience of being the last living face another human being saw before they left this world. I know what death looks like from the outside. I know its vocabulary. I thought I understood what I was watching. What is gathered around me now is every patient for whom I feared the worst, the ones whose dying seemed hardest, the ones who went frightened or alone or in pain or all three, the ones whose faces came back to me at 2 a.m. in the years after they were gone. Every one of them is here. Every one of them is fully themselves, not a diminished version, not a recovered version, not a version that has been repaired from damage. They are complete. They are themselves in a way that is more themselves than they ever appeared in the ICU bed. It is as though the illness and the fear and the struggling were a kind of costume, and the costume is gone, and what remains is the actual person underneath. They are well, all of them. Not well in the clinical sense, not stabilized, not managed. Well in the sense of being whole. There is not one among them who carries the marks of what happened at the end. I do not know how long I stand in this gathering. Time does not behave here the way it behaves in an ICU, where everything is tracked in minutes and charted and documented. Time here is more like light, present everywhere, not moving in a direction. And then I see my father, Earl Morrison. He died 12 years ago in the ICU where I worked. Not my patient that day, but I was in the building. I got there as fast as I could. I was 30 seconds too late. And the image I have carried for 12 years, the image that my faith and all my years of experience could not dissolve, is the image of his face in his last minutes. He looked frightened. That is what I saw from the door. He looked like a man who did not know where he was going and was afraid. He is standing in front of me now. He is the man I remember from when I was 8 years old, standing on the bank of the Cumberland River on a Saturday morning, teaching me to fish. He had a particular quality of patience in those moments, a patience that was not passive, not waiting, but active, concentrated, the kind of patience that is actually a form of joy. He loved those mornings. I loved them because he was completely present in a way that busy people rarely are. He was all the way there. He is all the way here now. The fear I saw on his face is not here. It is not suppressed or hidden. It is simply absent because it was never his experience. What he communicates to me, and it comes as complete information, the way something arrives where you simply know the whole fact without being told its parts, is this. What I read on his face from the outside was not what he was experiencing on the inside. The fear was the body. The fear was the autonomic system in its final work, the breathing, the resistance, the physical machinery doing the last thing physical machinery does before it stops. From the outside, through a glass door, from 30 feet away, it looked like terror. From the inside, it was transition. It was the body stepping aside. He was not frightened. He was moving toward this. I cannot explain what it means to receive that after 12 years. If you have carried an image of a dying person's face, if you have spent years wondering what that face meant, what that person felt in the moments you could not reach them, you will understand something of what I am describing. The image I have carried dissolves, not replaced by something softer, not made palatable, simply corrected by the person who was there. Then he shows me something. He shows me a hymn, not the whole hymn, a verse, a specific verse, and specifically the second line of the second verse. He shows it to me in a way that is unmistakable, deliberate, with the same concentrated attention he had on those fishing mornings. I know the hymn. I have known it all my life. It is one I grew up singing, How Great Thou Art. I do not know which verse he means or why it matters. I hold it. The understanding that moves through me next is the largest thing I have ever been given. It is a correction of 33 years. I had been watching the outside of a door. I had stood in those rooms, and I had watched the dying, and I had read the outside of a door, the expressions, the breathing, the sounds, the monitors, and I had drawn conclusions from the surface of a crossing I had never been through myself. Not one of those deaths was what it looked like from my side of the door. Not one. What the dying were moving toward was not darkness. It was not void. It was not the mechanical cessation of a system running down. It was arrival. Every one of them arrived. Every one of them is here. I do not want to go back. I want to be honest about this, the way I am honest about everything, because I think people imagine that the pull back toward life is automatic or welcome. It is not. What I am inside right now is the most complete thing I have ever experienced. The ICU, the long shifts, the 2 in the morning second guessing, all of it has no weight against this. My daughter has no weight against this. And I love my daughter more than I know how to say. But I go back anyway. It is not a decision. It is simply what happens. The gathering recedes. My father's face is the last thing I hold, and then that is also gone. And I am aware of pavement and cold, and a voice saying my name, and then the specific fluorescent brightness of a hospital hallway. And I know exactly where I am because I have been in this building for 33 years. I am back at Vanderbilt. 5 minutes and 37 seconds. That is what the record says. That is how long I was on the other side of the door. I was in Vanderbilt for 3 days. The irony was not lost on me, nor on the staff, many of whom had known me for decades and came by to check on me with that particular combination of professional concern and personal awkwardness that happens when a colleague becomes a patient. I was in a room 1 floor above a unit where I had worked for 11 years. I knew the layout of the ceiling above me because I had walked this building for more than half of my adult life. My daughter Renee came the first evening. She is 38, a school teacher, practical and gentle in equal measure. She has her grandfather's patience, that concentrated quality, that willingness to be fully present. She pulled a chair to my bedside, and she held my hand without saying anything for a while, which is the right thing to do, and not everyone knows it. I told her what happened. I told her as precisely as I tell anything. The parking lot, the anaphylaxis, the crossing. I told her about the gathering, about recognizing the patients. I told her about the realization I had received, that what I had been watching for 33 years from the outside of the door was not what the dying were experiencing on the inside. I told her what I now know about the difference between the body's final resistance and the soul's actual passage. I watched her face as I spoke. She did not dismiss it. Then I told her about my father. I told her what I had carried for 12 years. I told her about being 30 seconds too late and the flatline still drawing, and the image of his face I had believed was fear. I told her what he communicated to me, that the fear was the body, not him, that from the inside, where he was, it was not terror, but transition. That the concentrated patience I remembered from the Cumberland River mornings was present in that gathering as completely as it had ever been in this world. He was not frightened. He was arriving. Renee was very still. I told her about the hymn. I told her that in the gathering my father had shown me a specific verse of How Great Thou Art, deliberately, with the focused attention that was the most characteristic thing about him, and specifically the second line of the second verse. I told her I did not know why that particular verse, or why that particular line. I had been holding it since I woke up, turning it, trying to understand what it was pointing at. Renee set down the coffee she had been holding. She set it down carefully, and she looked at me for a moment before she spoke. She said, "Mom, that was the verse Grandpa and Grandma sang at their wedding. The second verse. Grandma has always said so. I did not think you knew." I did not know. I need to be precise about this. I did not know which verse my parents had sung at their 1962 wedding. I had never been told. It was not a piece of information I carried. It is the kind of detail that belongs to a marriage, a thing between two people. And while I knew my parents had sung that hymn, the specific verse had never been part of any conversation I can recall. I called my mother from the hospital bed the next morning. I did not tell her what I was looking for. I asked her, as though in passing, if she remembered the hymn they had sung at the wedding. She said yes, "How Great Thou Art," and she began to describe it with the quiet pleasure of someone revisiting something precious. Without any prompting, she told me it was the second verse. She told me it was the second line of the second verse that her voice always caught on, even now, even when she sang it alone. The second line of the second verse. Exactly what my father showed me. He knew. From the place with the clarifying light, from the gathering of all those whole and undiminished people, he knew the exact verse of the exact hymn that belonged to the morning his marriage began, and he showed it to me. Not as sentiment. My father was not a sentimental man. He expressed love through presence and attention and the willingness to stand on a riverbank for 3 hours waiting for a fish that never came. He showed it to me as evidence. He knew I would need evidence. He raised a nurse. Then Renee said something else. She said, almost to herself, Grandpa was wearing the red plaid jacket he always wore fishing in the last photo Mom has of him. Did you know that? I did not know that. I had never seen that photo. It was at my mother's house, taken on one of his last good days, and my mother had kept it on her dresser, and I had not been to her bedroom since the previous Christmas. The red plaid jacket. The one he wore on the Cumberland River mornings, the one that was present in the gathering as certainly as he was. My daughter went very still. She looked at me the way students look at a teacher when something in a lesson breaks open and becomes real. She said, "He was there. He was really there. He was really there. All of them were really there." I want to speak to you now directly from everything I know. If someone you loved is gone, and the world has not explained how to live inside that, if the nights are the hardest part, I want to tell you something I now know with certainty. The distance is not what it feels like from this side. There is a companion, a small, quiet collection of true things called "They Are Never Truly Gone." It was written for the person sitting exactly where you may be sitting right now. Someone who has lost someone, who needs to know the signs, who needs permission to believe that the love is still moving in the world. I left it pinned in the first comment below this video. Scroll down and it will be the first thing you see. It is available right now at a price that will not stay this low. If any part of what I shared tonight stayed with you, please go look at it. You do not have to navigate this alone. I am 68 years old. I am a retired ICU nurse. I have a clinical understanding of death that most people do not have, and I spent 33 years applying that understanding to the outside of a door I had never been through. I have now been through it. 5 minutes and 37 seconds. I know what I saw. No one dies alone. That is not a comfort I am offering. That is a clinical finding I am reporting from the only vantage point that can deliver it, from the other side of the door. Every death I attended, every one of those 3,000 was met, was received. The person who appeared to cross alone from the outside was surrounded from the inside. My father was not afraid. He was arriving. And the face I believed I saw from the hallway was the body doing its last work. Not him, not his experience, not the truth of his crossing. The truth of his crossing was the concentrated patience he had on a Saturday morning on the Cumberland. The patience that was actually a form of joy. He carried it all the way through. We are not sending our people into darkness. We are sending them into a gathering, into completion, into the place where the light is different and the fear is gone, and everyone who preceded them is fully, wholly, and undiminishably there. I know this now. I cannot unknow it, and I will not pretend otherwise.